Alright, response video to Nick, the Modern Mystic. Shit, did a video. Mentioned my name, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mystic, for acknowledging my existence. So anyway, it's good. Um, so anyway, it's, Nick has always been good at breaking things down, kind of narrowing focus and prioritizing, I don't know, news bits or things to focus on. So yeah, I think it's kind of a good idea just to isolate these different elements and say, okay, well, what percentage of the problem, or what part of the problem is this wealth equation, and why is it a problem? Like, can too much money migrate into too few hands, and what's the consequence of that? I mean, is there a consequence if stuff moves from being distributed among a lot of people to stuff being in one pile that some rich person possesses? Do rich people manage their stuff differently than regular people who have stuff? And yeah, my argument would be that there's a huge difference in how they use stuff, and that is what makes the difference between an economy that runs and a feudal economy that freezes. Because consumption is no longer productive. It's no longer has a social interest. It's no longer really driven by any kind of natural supply and demand. It ends up being driven by the whims of the owners. So Nick says, so I'll get to that subject first, and it'll be a while probably, and so this might be a two-part video, so I'll post the first part on the website, so I better do the timer thing. I'm probably going to be over. Well, whatever. I'll try not to be. I'll watch the timer. That's what I'll do. Damn it, wasting time. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so first you said the British are already taking care of it, no problem. I really highly doubt that. I don't know the numbers there, but I bet the rich have been getting richer in spite of whatever tax code they have, because there's huge loopholes. People can set up trusts, or there's some kind of other crap that makes it really possible for the wealth, the control of the stuff, to stay in a class of people's hands, or in some place where it doesn't really go back into the economy. It stays in the little economy. It doesn't go back into the big economy. But anyway, I won't argue it right now. I'll just point out that these are just huge numbers. I mean, there's, the numbers I saw 2 weeks ago, 8,000 households have in this country produce as much income as the bottom 20% of the entire American population. So that's 8,000 families controlling as much as 70,000 people are living on. 70 million. I mean, it's just an amazing kind of number. But anyway, so I don't know what it is in Britain. I don't know exactly what the wealth distribution is there, but I bet you it's pretty obscene, and I bet you it has nothing to do with just this generation. It has to do with huge head starts, huge ownership head starts, and loopholes and all that other stuff. All right, I wanted to kind of sum up with this part, but I might as well get to this now. Anyway, I did 3 videos, and so if you got time, they're, some of them are a little long. Just cartoon drawing kind of stuff about how money's created and stuff. And anyway, the concept in there is that when rich people have a stuff, first off, money is just a representation of stuff. It is not, there's nothing magical about it. And stuff is people are just transferring it and exchanging it for labor, and that makes more stuff. So the more you do these transfers, the more you do these exchanges, the more labor you create, the more work you create, the more productivity, the more stuff, and people's stuff piles get bigger and all that kind of stuff. And the problem is when the rich own, and in theory, I would contend that in the economy, the amount of stuff is always limited. I mean, it grows over time, but at any one moment, it's limited. And so if you expect your stuff pile to get bigger, somebody else's stuff pile has to get smaller, or you have to extract future labor from them. So the only way you can get more stuff is you either have to take labor from them, or you have to take stuff from them. And that's the only way it works. So rich people aren't free. The only way they can exist is by extracting labor or stuff from people. And that when rich people own stuff, their view of the stuff is, I want my stuff pile to make more stuff. Their expectation is that this interest thing happens and their stuff pile keeps growing. And so the only way it can do that, though, is it has to keep extracting work and stuff from somebody else. That's the only way it can happen. And that's where the whole thing becomes ludicrous, because in theory, if any stuff pile has an entitlement to growth and to produce income, where it just keeps making stuff, it essentially becomes a stuff-producing machine, even though it doesn't do any work, even though it can't be productive in any real sense of that word. It can't do real productive work. It's going to get a salary, essentially. And so it's going to be competing with a worker. And so the worker is going to have to is getting paid less and less and less. The stuff pile owner is getting paid more and more and more, and that's where everything just goes to hell. And so there's a real huge difference. If stuff is in the hands of consumers, they're not worried about depreciating. They expect their life to depreciate. They don't have the expectation that their life gets more valuable. They expect that they buy a car and it falls apart and they have to buy a new one. Rich people are kind of expecting that that car sit in a pristine garage and have some value over time where it will resell for a higher price. And that's their expectation. So they won't let their stuff ever get eaten or consumed, because that's not what they have the stuff for. They have the stuff for there to make them money, so they can live off the increase in the stuff pile. And the regular person, though, lives to eat. He lives to have sex. He lives to, wipe his feet on the rug. He lives to depreciate his life. He consumes his life. He doesn't have an expectation, like I said, that his life earns him something. He eats it. He consumes it. He consumes his labor. And the rich man's laborer, its stuff pile, he doesn't want to consume it. And so basically we've been in an economy where the rich have been getting so friggin' rich that they've been willing, off the cheap labor in China and whatnot, that they've been willing to spend a lot of their stuff just because they got so much stuff coming in that they're not even depreciating their pile. So even if they get really obscene in their spending, their stuff pile is still getting bigger. They're not eating it. And so they can afford to spend a lot. And so the rest of us living here can afford not to have productive jobs, because we can afford to just polish the shoes on the rich man or do some silly service for the rich man because he's been willing to spend his money. Well, the rich man's his stuff pile can't grow anymore, because there's no more labor, there's no more people to extract it from. He's taking he's paying people as little as he can in China, and everybody else's value as a laborer has been degraded. Everybody's in debt as extreme as they can be, so they can't pay any more interest to anybody, anywhere. Can't pay it to the government, they can't pay it to a rich man, they can't pay anything. And they're getting unemployed to boot. But part of what's going to accelerate that is, as the rich, as their stuff pile stops growing now, because consumption is going to be limited, that they've been feeding off of. They're feeding off of other people's consumption. Well, if they stop consuming, the rich are going to stop gaining income, and their stuff pile isn't going to get bigger anymore, and they're going to stop consuming. And so now we're not even going to have that other labor where we were serving the rich. Yeah, they're still going to live in a fancy house, and they're still going to need people to polish this and that, but there's just not going to be the excessive Pharaoh-type lavishness that they're going to consume through anymore. And so we're not going to have jobs building their yachts, and we're not going to have jobs doing a lot of the other things we were doing to service the rich and their gluttony. And so even that part of the economy is going to freeze. And that's just what happens. I mean, it's like when a king owns everything, he's not smart enough to know that the peasants need incentive to live. And he's got to give them incentive to do work. And if he's going to tax them, if he's going to take all the profit out of all their industry, then they're just going to be feudal and defeated, and they're not going to give a shit. And they're going to become very unproductive. And that's what's going to happen to us. We're just, all incentive is going to be destroyed because it's a feudal existence. Because your labor is going to be taxed so highly that there's no point in doing it. No point in living, really. But people just, they do it just because they're alive and they don't want to not be alive. All right, so that's, we can go on forever on this one, but yeah, there needs to be no loopholes. The inheritance, the wealth of things got to be really fixed, hard, and that means that you freeze how much an estate can give away in total, like you make a limit of $20 million or something, and you freeze how much any one individual can get off of that estate to whatever, $2 million or something. I mean, these are arbitrary numbers, but there has to be something at the extreme that just says no more. It doesn't go any higher than that. It's the last ticket you can buy. It's the last free game. It's the, no matter how good a player you are of the pinball machine, there usually always is a limit where it doesn't let you win too many free games, because then it knows you're going to walk away from the machine with like 500 free games on the machine, and so everybody else is just going to play all those free games. Well, anyway, I'm just saying that's a bad metaphor, but